Hey guys, so I just played through the Final Fantasy XVI DLC The Rising Tide until I 100% completed all of the achievements, which took a lot longer than I was expecting. There was a huge wall I had to overcome. And, well, here are my thoughts on the DLC. I'll break this down into 3 parts: story, presentation, and gameplay. And we'll begin with story. So, in The Rising Tide, we meet up with a new character named Shula, who comes from the village of Haven, found on the island of Mysidia, which has been hidden for over 100 years by ancient magics. Shula has learned of Clive's way with the Eikons, and she needs his help to save their dominant, who is the host of Leviathan. And I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll leave it at that. There are also 10 new side quests added for the DLC, and they dive into the lore and history of the village. We learn why they fled and hid themselves for over 100 years, and more about their customs and beliefs. Now, I did think that there was some narrative dissonance with what is shown and said. We learn that the people living in Haven are poor, and it's a rough place to live, but that isn't reflected in what we see. Haven comes off as a hidden paradise, like a small-knit community that takes care of one another. If they are struggling, it really doesn't show. So overall, I thought the story and lore was serviceable. It's far better than what we got in Echoes of the Fallen, but wasn't exactly a selling point for me. Next up, let's look at presentation. So, Final Fantasy XVI is a beautiful game, and Mysidia is a breathtaking place filled with amazing vistas, bright blue skies, and tranquil streams. It was a refreshing change of scenery that I think we all needed, because the endgame is very bleak. With gray skies, dead lands, it's actually really depressing, so it was nice to take a break from that. When it comes to the combat presentation, it's very good. Watching back the combat in this game, you just look so cool, even when you are playing badly because you haven't touched the game in a while. But I'll get more into that in a little bit. Where the presentation falters for me is with many of the cutscenes. Characters are mostly just standing around while delivering their dialogue. There isn't much expression in their face or movement. And after playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where the characters are just so lively, this felt jarring. And so I saved what I think is the best for last: the combat. I love the combat in Final Fantasy XVI. Even after playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which I've heard people say blows this combat out of the water, I just don't think that's true. They are very different systems with different goals, and I think they are both very fun. Anyways, the new icon power is Leviathan, and I really like this moveset. So the main gimmick is Leviathan turns you into a full-on ranged DPS. You pull out a Leviathan-shaped machine gun and blast enemies away with bullets made of water. There's also a really cool reload mechanic, and if you perfectly time your reload, you get infinite ammo for a short time. I thought that was a lot of fun. I'm a huge fan of rhythm games in general, so I'm always happy to see timing as a mechanic. The DLC also came with 3 boss encounters. The first is against Haridamar, which I was a bit disappointed with, because it's a reskin of a boss we've already fought multiple times before. Speaking of which, many of the enemies are going to look familiar. Outside of the Tomberries and a few bosses, there are a lot of reskins. Anyways, back on Haridamar, there is a new mechanic here. He drops poison all over the floor, shrinking the arena, but otherwise it plays out exactly how I remembered it. Don't get me wrong, it's still a fun boss. I just wish it was a new boss. Now, the second boss is brand new, and it's against a knight called the Timekeeper. His gimmick is summoning multiple weapons to attack you with. Each weapon has its own moveset with different animations and timings. So yeah, I really liked this encounter. I thought it was a lot of fun learning his different attacks. And I have to say, the sound design and animation for countering is one of the best I've ever seen in an action game. It just feels so crunchy and visceral. And the last boss is the big spectacle fight against Leviathan, and I honestly think this encounter alone is worth the price of admission. So just like every Icon encounter, it's long, it has amazing visuals, the presentation is jaw-dropping, and you feel so epic while you are doing it. Also the music, my god, the music. Soken absolutely knocked it out of the ballpark. The other nice thing about this one is, I actually thought it was pretty hard. I died multiple times while learning it. Some of the attacks are pretty tough to learn the timing of, and they do a lot of damage. Now, the big new challenge, the wall that I mentioned earlier, that's found at the Arete Stone, and it's called the Kairos Gate. And what you have to do is beat 20 floors in a row. Each floor has multiple challenging encounters on them, and you can't use items. So HP is a resource that you really want to keep as much as possible. Now, with that being said, they are kind enough to restore some of your HP whenever you beat a floor. So yeah, this is where I spent most of my time in this DLC. It took me a while to clear all of the floors, and that was with barely passing them. I can't even imagine getting an S rating on them all. And so that's the DLC. I think that it's worth the price. There is a decent chunk of content here. It's mostly really well done, and I stand by that the Leviathan fight makes it worthwhile, all on its own. Anyways, that'll be all for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye.